Hello and welcome back to the Coffee Shack and the Stay Mental Health Awareness campaign. Today we have Jer and Michael from the Samaritans, and today's subject is the art of listening. So, what is the art of listening?
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Jer.
Yeah, Joe, I don't know. A lot of people now these days, it's conversation when you're listening back and forth. You're just listening to me and I listen to you. But a lot of people don't really listen. What it's been said to me, like, people listen to respond, they don't listen to understand. Which a lot of people, you're constantly thinking, what are they saying? You're not actually fully listening. So if you just kind of stop, engage, like a lot of people have their phones, like Jerry's a phone out there. You put your phone down, knock it all off, and really truly listen to the person. And it's amazing how much you actually understand what the actual person is really saying.
Yeah. Is that something that you've got to learn to?
It is a skill, yeah. Because I was amazed before I became a Samaritan. I thought, yeah, I'm a good listener because I've worked in IT, worked in call centre for 10 years. I thought I was a good listener. But it's amazing how much you don't hear. If you're I'm looking at you now, you can see you're studying my face, you kind of been looking serious. But you tell a lot from the person's body language. You don't just listen with your ears, you listen with your eyes. You look at the person, if their hands are clasped, where their hands are. You can tell a hell of a lot by a person.
Their physical.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can just say a lot of people listen, to people to respond. Do you know what I mean? They're thinking about what they're going to say to the person as they're talking, or they'll say, "Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about." I had a similar experience, and then it becomes about, well, if it's friends, it's about both of you.
Yeah.
But when, as a Samaritan, when you're talking to a caller, it's all about the caller. So you listen. You're not listening to respond. You're listening to the person and what they're actually saying.
Mm-hmm.
And silences are okay. So if there's a pause between, when you're listening, actually there can be more silences. But so it's that's part of the art of listening as well. Actually listening to the person, really listening to the person, and hearing what they're saying, hearing what they're not saying, which is even more important.
Yeah. And how do you know when to respond or how to respond? Is that... I'm asking the wrong question there.
No, you're not. You're not.
Like in Spartans, we're not there to kind of talk to the person, or we're there to listen to the person and let them speak. We give them the space to speak. So that's why we kind of, we're not listening to respond, we're listening to understand the person. We give them the space, and then we help and guide them through with certain questions we ask. How does that feel for you? Things like that. And let them guide themselves through the problems they're having.
That's one thing we adhere to. It's always feelings. It's how they're feeling about something. It's not what's really happening in their lives. It's how they are responding or feeling to that. And everybody can feel differently about different things. But when we're listening to them, we're really just listening to what they're saying to us. We reflect back what they say to us too. Now we might reflect back slightly different to them, and that can make them think differently about it. And we would never be there to try and solve their problem. Never. We allow them, like, we could maybe tell 10 minutes into the call what's going on here, but they can't see it. But maybe by the end of the call they get there themselves and they can actually see it. So it's just by us reflecting back things to them that they're talking about, but it's not really registering with them. And when we reflect it back to them, when they hear it from us, they can really think about it differently. Yeah.
Oh, so they're speaking for the first time about this.
They're
actually physically speaking.
Yes. That's what's been in there the whole time, going round and round in their heads. And they're actually they're vocalizing it. They're getting it out there. And when you reflect it back to them, then they're hearing it. And that's different. As you know yourself, it actually activates different parts of the brain as well. So it can really, just even reflecting back what they're saying to you, they can suddenly register with them. They can hear it in a different way and understand it in a different way themselves. That's the whole secret. It's totally down to the caller.
So even the fact that there's vocalizing it is of help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because for so long it's been in their head.
Yeah.
And obviously, I remember during our training with times this morning, the analogy I was given was like a tumbler. just constantly going through their head and all that. And then when they're talking, it's like just taking one piece of clothing at a time. Like start making sense of it.
Yes.
So
That's a good way of describing it. Yeah.
I presume people who call you, it's a huge thing for them to call you. I'm just presuming that maybe they've thought about it a long time.
Of course, like we get calls now, we call them snap calls. You answer the phone, hello Samaritans, well, it's gone, just hang up.
Yeah.
And we get loads of them. But that's, initially I thought that very difficult to take because I thought they don't even want to talk to me. But then I thought, that's somebody plucking up the courage to eventually talk, and eventually somebody will talk, you know.
Yeah.
It's the bravest thing, the greatest thing for them to do is just to lift that phone and start talking.
And then the next stage from the snap is for somebody who's finding it difficult to talk, or somebody who's calling for the first time, is silence. So, for instance, they don't hang up straight away, and you know there's someone there. So it's you just take it easy. You say, "I'm here." You take your time. Whenever you feel like talking, that's okay. And you could have silence for a minute, but then you could have silence for 5 minutes, and you just keep interjecting and just letting them know. And it sort of goes beyond a certain length of time. Just say, look, maybe you're just finding it very difficult to talk at the moment, and if you'd like to call us back. And then at that stage, they can actually say something, because the fear of putting the phone back down again is probably without getting out what they want to say. And that can be a catalyst for them to say something. Just to even start, it can just be one word, it can be tears, it can just get the ball rolling. It can be very difficult for some people. Yeah.
And how would we, let's talk about the art of listening. So how can we be better with people? I mean, because obviously if people have the same qualities of listening in families, maybe we could get through.
Absolutely.
No problem.
And that's the whole issue, is just listening. Anyone can be a listener. Anybody.
Yeah.
And listen to hear, not listen to respond. So just sit back and let the person talk. Yeah. And obviously in families it's different. You have that emotional connection, which is different for us. We don't know our callers.
Yeah.
And that can make a difference, because you want to help them. You know, if you have somebody feeling really, really low, you want to help them. You want to make that difference for them. But that's not what they want. They just want to get out there and tell you how they're feeling. Yeah.
And like with your family and friends, like it's in your nature to try and, because you love the person or you have some kind of emotional connection, you want to help them. You want to change something for them. And it's your instinct to kind of, to change something for them, or do this. But that's your own opinion. Like your person you're talking to, it's their experience, their own issue, their own problem, their own way. And whatever may have worked for you may not work for them. So they're their own expert in their own sense. So we just allow a person to speak about their own mind, to divulge their own emotions. And then they may see, oh, okay, I never thought of that this way and that way. And they get to find their own solutions, So if in a family and friend, they're going to tell you what to do, how to do it. And that's what we don't give advice. We just allow the person themselves to experience themselves and get their own solutions themselves,
Yeah.
Because if somebody tells you what to do, you're not going to, you're less likely to do it. Whereas if you discover it yourself and say, oh, right, you're going to remember that and do it yourself,
Yeah.
Also, another thing is when you start telling people what to do, usually they jam up and stop talking.
Yeah. It's a judgment. We don't judge.
Do you think men are more inclined to want to give solutions than women?
That's probably, the whole Bob the Builder, kind of, you want to fix it, gives the drill, gives the screwdriver, want to fix it, with a gaffer taping up, but I'd say it is. It does surprise me, in Samaritans, like I mentioned before, we're predominantly female. There's very few males that, we have, I don't know how many stats that we have, but it's probably 2/3 female, 1/3 male, maybe around that rule of thumb, but it is a kind of a stereotype thing. That's what we're trying to change, trying to get people, more men to open up, and we'd love to have more male volunteers coming through.
Yeah. And so, is it mostly on the phone that you're listening to people?
At the moment, we'll be on the phone.
Because of COVID.
Yeah. Like we do have face-to-face where a person can, like a drop-in, they can come in and see us. We also do emails, which is can be quite popular.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like you say, we vocalise it. Some people just like to type it down and write it out.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of communication. We used to have a text service as well, but with technology, people seem to kind of move on. And it's actually become more popular where people ring us, to talk us on the phone. But we do have email, and we can there's old fashioned. You can write a letter to us as well.
That's right.
We have a letter service as well. Still,
Oh, really?
Yeah,
people like write their issues down.
that's right.
we-
And we respond
reply,
to
yeah.
them. Yeah, we reply to them.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
Now, not
We
it
have a
wouldn't
particular
be
branch.
to each branch. It's
yeah.
one particular branch you handle.
Specialised.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about other social medias like
We
Facebook?
have at the moment. We will have. The pilot is in the UK at the moment, but I think it's like a web chat based
Yeah.
service we have, which is quite popular.
Mhm.
And the great thing about that too is well, you're still with the same person. Whereas on an email, sometimes you could be different people that could be replying to that
And
email.
different branches.
But with the
yeah.
web chat itself, it's that one person that's going to be with you the whole way through
Yeah.
the service. You know.
Yeah. Which
We're always looking at different ways of
Of-
improving our
Yeah.
communication with different people.
connecting with people. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I know that we're talking about listening here, but is there a point where you have to say somebody's in danger, or
Yeah, well, with the recent regulations that have come through with the children's first policies, you know, we have to remind we're legally obliged at the time, like if there's any mention of abuse or a vulnerable adult or a child is, you know, there's mention of abuse, we have to remind the person, like, you know, if you give us identifiable information, we're duty bound to report that. You know, that's the only caveat we have to our confidentiality.
And of course, then we know nothing. We don't, when a person calls us, we don't see a telephone number. So it's totally anonymous. So unless they give us anything but their first name, everything is completely confidential. Once we have to have definite information about a person. So it's up to them to pass it on to us if they want to. But other than that, it's totally confidential.
Yeah, confidentiality is one of the cornerstones of our service. Because if that's not there, the person doesn't trust us. You know, if the person doesn't trust us, they're not going to talk to us. You know, and get the issue. So it's
Yeah.
a big issue. Our main mission is in Samaritans is that fewer people die by suicide.
that's right?
Our mission.
Fewer people die by suicide.
Yeah.
So if somebody volunteers that wants to be a volunteer at Samaritans, what happens? What training?
Excellent training. Second to none.
It blew me away, the training itself.
Yeah.
Like, at the moment now, we've gone half online, half with our training that often we're Zoom. We do Zoom training as well. But when I started, you're talking about there's two sides of this: Sit 1 and Sit 2. Like this, what does Sit stand for?
No, that's changed.
Samaritans are training, but we've changed it.
Yeah.
We were two parts. Like it was nearly 6 months. Like every week, one
Yes.
evening a week, you came down for the first section of it, and it was all intensive training, different subject each week. And then you went into the branch with your mentor. You were mentoring with it. You weren't taking calls, but you'd see how the calls were done, and then you'd switch over, and then you'd be guided with your mentor as well. But you were taking calls.
Yeah. So you'd have 8 or 9 training sessions before you went in with your mentor. Each new volunteer is given a mentor, and you do 8 or 9 duties, of which one includes an overnight, what we call overnights. And then you are free to go on your own in training. Training is second to none. It's excellent training. Yeah.
What are you learning in the training? Is to take away your own kind of biases or your maybe temptation to
Well, everyone has their own bias. I would, Jeremy, I'm sure you do as well. Just your own way you're brought up and things like that. But yeah, it's a skill to be able to, when you go in, you're going in to take a call. I don't know how to describe it. It's like when I go in, it's as if a hat comes on me or something. You know, I put on. Some people call it the Smartest hat you put on.
Yeah.
And you just leave whatever else is behind you outside the world. You're kind of focusing in whatever the call is, whatever the email will be.
Yeah.
And then at the end of your shift, as Jeremy was saying, you kind of we debrief to our leader what the calls were like and what we've had.
Right.
And then whatever notes you had, obviously for confidentiality, we shred them. But I find that physical act of shredding just kind of takes from what's in my mind, what I've been listening to, puts it into that shredder, and then close the door behind me, and I'm able to face some family, friends, whatever else.
Right, so you're not taking it with you.
No, definitely not. No, you have to be able to just leave it behind you because.
And another thing too, as Samaritans, we look after each other. Huge. I mean, when you think about it, you can't pour from an empty cup. Exactly. So when we come in on duty, the kettle would always go on, and that's probably the one thing we were missing at the moment because of, hygiene and COVID restrictions. The two duties aren't meeting. So, for instance, the previous duty will be gone about 10 minutes before the new duty comes in because you're not allowed to have more than 2 people in the branch at a time. So that connection that we had with each other, because you'd come in, you put the kettle on, you'd have a little chat. So basically, you talk about our callers calling us and us being there for them. Number one, we're there for each other first and make sure we're okay.
Yeah, it's a huge
Very
support
important.
Samaritans family. It's great.
And you're missing that now.
Very much so. And a lot of our volunteers have been cocooning. There would be, for one reason or another, it could be for health reasons, but we would, as you know, we would have a lot of older volunteers, so they needed to cocoon. And our younger volunteers would have taken on extra duties to fill the rota, and we're 24-hour service. So no matter what time of the day you pick up, or night you pick up that phone, we're at the end of it, There's 13 branches in the Republic. And you'll always get someone on the phone, no matter what time of the day or night it is. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's constantly going.
Constantly going. Yeah.
Are there times of the year when it gets more, you get more calls?
You would get it sometimes, the likes of holidays and things like that, but yeah, it would.
And also too, you might see on the television sometimes, the way where something like on one of the programs there's been a tough subject discussed on a program. You'll always get at the end of it, if anything has affected you, and they say to go to the website, and we're actually in there. So we might get a little note, from our leader or from somebody to say, look, just you might get some extra calls tonight because something has been touched on TV, and you would notice the difference.
Like the Coronation Street or even the Late Late Show, to say if you've been affected by this, you'll always nearly find if you're on a duty to Friday night show, the Late Late Show must be off flipping the phones. Within a minute, the phones will be ringing you. It's bizarre.
So that really does have an effect.
Yeah.
And are young people having pressures from social media now? Does that affect them? I don't know if this is off subject. Is it? I don't know.
No, it's our callers, young people. At the beginning of COVID, there was a huge fear that children, because they were home from school, there was no school, where they'd been affected. Where things changed for them, and in a lot of cases where things have got tougher for them. But in general, they felt that they were actually safe at home. It's when we come out of COVID and they have to go back to school, we have to all go back to work or whatever. That's when anxiety can arise. People have got comfortable with being at home, no stress, not rushing to work every morning. Young people at home, they still have their social media. They can connect with each other and message each other. But the one thing that does come up is isolation and loneliness.
One thing I definitely find about younger people now, I still think I'm younger myself, but with younger people like teenagers and young adolescents, what amazes me about them is they're more vocal about their own feelings, their own emotions. So mental health is really, in the last 10 years, I think the stigma of mental health is starting to come down.
Yeah.
As these kids and adolescents are starting to mature, that ease of talking about mental health is coming there, and it's great to see it. And I think they have the skills. It's just a matter of them finding themselves and internalizing themselves and how they and just the confidence in themselves that I'm okay. I'm able to talk about this.
Yeah.
Which I think they could teach us more about.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, there's definitely a change, and the younger generation
definitely can see it.
Are opening up.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
And the issues that people have, do they change from generation to generation?
Not really. It's they're still the same subjects more or less. Just how they're experienced is kind of slightly different. As you said about social media. Whereas before, there could be somebody bullied in the workplace, whereas now they're being bullied online, different things like that. But it's essentially the same subjects,
Yeah.
But it's mainly just about loneliness. People are lonely.
Yeah.
You could be a family of 14 kids, but you're still at home. There could be a housewife that's at home. I'm not trying to be stereotypical, but they're home the whole time, or the husband's out at work, or, you could be surrounded by everyone, but still be the loneliest person in the place.
Yeah.
You think that nobody understands me. Or as you mentioned before about the whole male thing about not being able to talk, they're keeping internalizing it.
Yeah.
And that's the phone calls we get, like people just talking to a stranger.
Yeah.
And just letting all out,
Yeah.
put the phone down, and they're able to go on again with the whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's great to be able to, with the art of listening and like talking to somebody, it's allowing them to kind of release that pressure.
And also too, like you imagine, like when people are feeling very housed at the moment, very, you know, the family is all at home and they're all, you know, they have to stay there and they can't get out. But also you would imagine that, you know, they're there and they could be there for each other. But we find too that people will call us because, first of all, they might think that their family are just fed up listening to them. Okay, that can be one. And or nobody wants to listen to me. Who wants to listen to this? And they'll call us, and they know they can call us and talk to us. You know, so it's huge. Like, you know, and as I say, you could be a whole lot of people in the house, but
I don't know, stereotypical again, being Irish, you don't want to burden somebody with your problems.
that's it.
Or you don't want to be listening to me, you know, like that's.
And it's easier to talk to a stranger too.
Yeah.
Far easier. Yeah.
I know that myself.
Yeah.
So do you think, do you teach the art of listening to just in general, like, would you go to schools or would you talk about that? Like, you know, because it sounds like a skill that most people should learn.
Yeah, we have outreach programs that do go to schools quite well.
Yeah.
Since pre-COVID, yes, we would have gone out to the schools. Like here in Drogheda, we have the Diffie College. We have a good relationship with them. We would regularly go out to the students.
And we call them emotional talks.
Yeah.
And within the emotional talk, it would come up about the art of listening, that's what Samaritans do. But we would let them know too that, you know, they're able to do that too, and to keep an eye out for their friends, or you know, they're concerned about their friend, if they see a change in their friend, or if they're feeling, you know, very isolated and lonely or whatever. You know, think about the family who've lost a loved one during COVID, either by COVID, due to COVID, or, you know, just dying during COVID.
Yeah.
And, you know, you talk to people, the one thing people get great comfort from is from people telling stories about their loved one. And that happens at an Irish funeral as well. That's, you know, it's all gone. And I'd like to think after all this that, you know, those people who have died during COVID will be remembered by their family, will be celebrated. We should call it celebrated by their families.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even if it's a year late.
Yes, it's so important. So important for the grieving process for each individual, like, you know. So, and everybody grieves differently. You could have 5 people in the one house and they all grieve differently. Yeah.
It might be a weird question, but do you think that the actual society we live in and the history that we've had as Irish people can cause trauma as well in people? Like, don't know how you feel about that, but
like you talk about the North, for instance,
Northern Ireland, or even go back to maybe the Civil War. Does it lead on from generation? Does it take a while? And you might actually hear about somebody saying, "Trauma stops here. Trauma stops here now with me." And that's when people go for help, go for counselling or whatever. And basically could have been 3 generations of it being carried through from one generation to the other. Also, our feelings and emotions and how we are in touch with them can go from one generation to the other. We could totally shut down because our parents were shut down. So it's where, you know, there's great strength and great growth in somebody who can surpass that, come out of that. And, you know, and even just being able to talk about your emotions and your feelings can you imagine for someone who's never spoken about their feelings or emotions, or never been asked about their feelings or emotions, and how liberating it would be for them to suddenly be able to.
That's what's interesting, like about the younger folk, how easy they are to talk about their emotional health and their mental health. That's why I'm hoping that that's the start of, when you mentioned, Jeremy mentioned about like a generational trauma, like, you know, go back to the famine, Civil War, whatever else, the traumas in the North. They were breaking that cycle, and it's starting, you know, if generations time, like people, each generation goes along, they're easier to talk about their own emotions.
Yes.
That'll be amazing. You know?
Yes.
So it'll put us out of a volunteer position, like, but that's what we want, you know, for people to be able to talk. and really talk and really listen. To
And
each other,
also,
you know.
young people are very accepting.
Yeah.
That's one thing you might notice, that like the younger people in general are so accepting. Just think of that our vote that we had there a number of years ago, and how people, even the older people, came out and voted for gay marriage.
Yeah.
And and people are so accepting of it. Young people in particular.
Yeah.
And I really love that idea that these are the young people going forth, and as each new generation comes along, hopefully
learn something from the generation before.
Yeah, and become more open, more accepting.
Yeah, I know when I had counselling and I found the benefits of it, I just thought, I wish my father had done the same.
Yeah.
Well, there's that stigma too as well, like going to therapy or talking to somebody. Like with Samaritans, initially we have, when we start volunteering at Samaritan, we'd always take a different name or whatever else, to protect ourselves and all that. But I find out even some of the volunteers, they decide not to. It's just like, my name is my name. I don't mind talking about saying I'm a volunteer for Samaritans. Or there's that stigma of mental health again. Like it is changing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that it's changing quite quickly. As Jer mentioned about the different referendums, like you can imagine the generation before that, if they tried even 20, 30 years ago, there would be no hope of getting some of those referendums through.
No.
Which Ireland, in a short space of time, we've changed so much. And I think we're guiding light for a lot of other countries in Europe and throughout the world, like where we've been and what we've come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you get calls from people who are immigrants as well?
Yeah, well, we actually do. In Samaritans, like we've recently launched with our expatriates, like throughout the world, like in Canada, even Hong Kong, China. You can ring a phone number and speak to somebody in Ireland, like in their Samaritans.
Yeah,
which is great.
It went on board just before Christmas, and now obviously it's there, and there'll be more and more countries added to it, and it's just fantastic.
It's Irish people abroad.
Irish people abroad
can
ring Samaritans in Ireland, and of course they can email us as well. Whichever they prefer, but they can phone us. They can get an Irish person at the end of the phone.
And that means a lot, I guess, to have an Irish voice.
Yeah.
And what about people who've immigrated here?
It's lovely to see how people are integrating into their communities in Ireland, and obviously, probably if they were only just recently here, you know what it's like. You know what it's like, and you just move down the country, just trying to get used to it, and see where all the services are and what you can avail of. I can imagine what it's like for someone coming into the country trying to do that. So it can be a lot of loneliness there, probably family at home and very few people here. So yes, it's lovely. Language would probably be the one thing, but the Europeans are fantastic. We'd put us to shame. They can speak, they can speak perfect English. But that would probably be the one area. I'm sure we would get a lot more people calling us if they could, get their point across. But it's great that they do. Yeah, absolutely.